was watching a video this morning by someone called, I think it was either Mud Keeper or Mud Skipper, and it was about symbolic gesture. I'll put a link in the description box. It's a good video, nice and short, really clear, well-made video, excellent piece of work, very clear articulation of the ideas. And the idea was, he was really talking about burning things, burning Qurans, for example, or burning flags, and how these were symbolic gestures, and how impotent they were. That seemed to be the impression. These are impotent gestures which people carry out when they could be carrying out much more potent gestures. Sorry, a bit of a curve coming up here, so I'm going to turn. When they could be doing much more practical, active things. I think he also cited kind of performance artwork, I guess related to people like Andres Serrano, or that work which is kind of vaguely provocative. The sentiment being, as I say, that these people, instead of wasting their time making these gestures, they should be actually out on the streets doing something practical. And I think for the most part I would agree. Certainly something, well, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I'm guessing that something like burning a Quran, he would say, was a bit stupid and pointless, because there's so many more practical things you can do rather than set fire to a book in your back garden. You could join an activist group, you could write a letter to your MP, you could stand for Parliament yourself, you could protest outside embassies. There's all kinds of really completely practical things you could do. You could try to articulate your feelings about it in a really clear form, which help people to understand what you're talking about. So there's all kinds of things you can do which do have an actual active principle in the world, rather than, as I say, just burning a book. That seemed to be his sentiment, and I would absolutely agree with that for most of the time. If what you are thinking about can be put into words, it's better to put it into words, particularly if it's something political, or in the way this burning of the Quran stuff is being framed. Because really, the people who are burning Qurans, what they mean by that is really clear, and we know it's clear because people articulate it very clearly. So it's a bit redundant just doing the Quran burning thing. I mean, there might be other reasons why you might do it other than its symbolic power, but when it's used for that, it is, I would agree with Mud Keeper, redundant and a bit self-indulgent. Where I disagree, or where I want to add to that really, is I think there are particular circumstances when symbolic gesture, symbolic action more broadly, is a more appropriate response. And I think that's particularly the case when you're trying to respond or think through ideas and issues which don't have clear correlates in terms of spoken language, words that can't be put into words quite as easy. So as I say, if you can put them into words, put them into words, really. But if you can't, if you've got a feeling about something, or there's something, a sense of a connection between things that's working for you, that you can't quite get into lines of English words, then it might be more useful to use symbolism of some kind, or to use objects, or to use actions. I mean, that's part of the way our brain works, apart from anything else. Quite a lot of what goes on in our brains doesn't work at the level of articulated language, does it? It works at the level of complex symbol and action and all that kind of stuff. And indeed, it's the way that a lot of society works, which isn't to justify it, it's just an observation that those things exist. So there are, I think, really good reasons why it's good to do that. Actually, there's a kind of relationship between this and Sassy Bob. Sassy Bob recently made a video, I'm sure you know about this, made a video offering to put a tattoo on her derriere, according to the suggestions made by her viewers. And I think initially there was a suggestion that viewers might pay for the privilege in some kind of raffle, which I think has since been withdrawn because it's against some law or other, I think. It's a very interesting action, that. I'm not sure if it's still going ahead, or whether it's free or I don't know. Anyway, but it's an interesting action. It provoked a lot of response. It provoked response videos saying it was misogynistic. It provoked response videos saying that it was an issue of body autonomy and people should be allowed to do what they like. It provoked a whole series of responses, and that's kind of the point of a symbolic action. I mean, I'm not suggesting for one moment I would not tar Sassy Bob with the label of artist, unless you really wanted it, Sassy Bob. But that is kind of a strategy that is used by some artists or activists, if they want to not so much articulate a clearly thought out position, like Islam is bad, for example, but want to open up a set of arguments in a simple way. So what they're doing is providing a catalyst which just kind of explodes a series of what up to that point have been either unspoken or largely unspoken agendas. So when people make responses to Sassy Bob, just for this very simple action, I'll tattoo my arse if you give me some cash, or tell me what you want me to put on my arse and I'll do it. Really simple action like that, and it just opens up this whole set of things to do with to do with misogyny, to do with body autonomy, to do with ownership, to do with permanence and commitment, to do with marking and being marked, to do with pain possibly, to do with taboo. So, there's lots of agendas which kind of feed into that, or could feed into that. As I said in the previous video, I think it was, and don't take this the wrong way, Bob, if you ever watch this video, I think it was a little bit under-researched. Because it could have been so much better, I can certainly see myself doing exactly, I wouldn't do exactly that because I wouldn't get any offers, but I can certainly see myself doing that kind of thing. But I would want to do a couple more things with it. The first thing is you have to go through with it, not you, but one has to go through with it if you're going to engage in that kind of action. Just a promise is not good. You have to see it through, right the way through to the end, regardless of what the consequences are, really, because because the consequences are the action. So you have to see it through to the end. It does have to be researched, so it's a bit of a shame this whole thing about the raffle of cash thing wasn't researched properly, because it would have been nice to find a way to get money involved, because it adds a different agenda, but given the difficulties around it, it probably would have been better to take it off the table and keep it clean. But it definitely needed something else doing with it, and the thing that I would have done with it, and this is just a suggestion, one first thing, is to do a kind of Jenny Holzer with the text that was sent in, because I've looked at some of the comments that have been left below the various videos that have mirrored Sassy Bob's original suggestion, and there's some hilarious suggestions. Obviously some really filthy ones, some very, very predictable ones that come up again and again and again. It's a really interesting way of taking a cross-section of a particular kind of opinion, and some really beautiful ones and supportive ones. So just in terms of generating some really interesting material, that symbolic gesture has generated some really interesting material there. So as I say, I'd probably do something like a Jenny Holzer with it. Jenny Holzer is a visual artist. I guess the work that I'm most familiar with hers was kind of 70s and 80s, and she did lots of large banner pieces, or pieces based in kind of advertising and propaganda and PR. Large banners, typically with aphorisms on which are sort of critical, kind of cynical, but also critical of contemporary culture. Her most famous one is one that just said, "I shop, therefore I am." Just really simple stuff. But she also did a piece where she put, again, aphorisms across the light display that was in Times Square at the time. It's one of those, I don't know what you call them, these like moving LED screens, but massive, like a marquee screen. And it would be great to have something like that linked into all these suggestions that went to Sassy Bob. You know what I mean? Ideally the Times Square thing, if it's still there, which I presume it is. But instead of having these Jenny Holzer or the latest baseball scores or the latest news or the latest Dow index things, you have these little phrases going across. Things like, oh God, I can't think of any, of course. They all involve anal sex, but a lot of that stuff just going across with these really nice ones as well. I love as, they're just fantastic. It would be fantastic, that. Or if not there, at least somewhere, somewhere in a gallery somewhere, or a performance space, or on an online gallery, so it can be accessed. That'd be a nice thing to do with it, because it just adds another dimension to it of opening out some ideas. If you ever fancy doing that, by the way, Bob, get in touch if you want, because I'm 99% sure I could probably get a venue in London if you're interested for that LED display. That'd be funny, wouldn't it? I'd love to do that, it'd be great.